Hello students and listeners, good evening. Welcome to discussion on one specific topic which we have chosen as tribal situation in India. This is one of the topics which comes in sociological inquiries or anthropological inquiries and also in social sciences. So today we feel the need of trying to understand the overall situation of the tribals in India. So today's task will be an overview, a general view of all the aspects, if we can touch some of them, all of them. But I feel we will not be able to cover most of the areas. However, I shall try to touch most of the important aspects that will make us understand more about the tribal situation, with special reference to India. Now there are few sub-themes that I have in my mind, with special references to, say, tribal culture, tribal economy or development, so on and so forth. Then there are issues of displacement of the tribals, development-induced displacement, and we can talk about tribal polity also, and politics. Then we can switch on to tribal movements and also social differentiation among tribes, and so there will be no dearth of sub-themes in our topic today, but let us see if we can, how much we can try to discuss in 45 minutes this evening. However, before I go into the deliberation, I would like to apologize to those people with special reference to the eastern part of India, because most of them would have been already sleeping, because this is already 7, and people in some areas like the northeast, they sleep at around 6 p.m. Now it is already 7. So for those of you who cannot get access to this program, you may get access through CDs or whatever. Well, this course is, like I said, is applicable to BA Sociology. We have ESOs, then also MA courses, both core courses, that is compulsory courses, and the optional courses. We call it MSO and MSOEs, respectively. We have in MSOE one block on tribal situation. So that part will also be touched upon, where we discuss about tribes and castes, social differentiation among tribes, perspective on tribes by different anthropologists, eminent anthropologists. So this, and also there are several other courses in ESOs, in bits here and there, and also in MSO also a little bit, that deals with ethnicity identity relating to tribal entity. So I think listeners can use it in their own way, but the main objective of this course is rather trying to give a brief introduction to all the major aspects of tribal situation in India. Well, India is a country that has a very large population of the tribals. In terms of subcontinent or continent rather, India comes second, just next to Africa, because in African countries we have more tribals than we have in other parts of the world. So India stands second in that sense. So for us to understand the situation of the tribals, which has about 8% or even a little bit more than 8% of the Indian total population, is, I think, significant aspect to understand. And more so because also of the geographical distribution of the tribals. The tribals population might be small, but in some parts of India, the tribals have a settled life with, vast territories. So they make a lot of, in terms of land and territory. So their population might be small, but the percentage of land holdings, the percentage of territory that they occupy is larger than their population ratio. And also because of the kind of, different understanding or differentiation of tribes from other communities. We can say ethnic differentiation. There has also been, some interest generated upon all these non-sociologists or anthropologists who have thrown in interest to understand. And of course, anthropologists and sociologists have been championing on trying to understand the tribal situation and the tribes in India and also in various parts of the world. But now, I think we have to try to focus our discussion. First, let us understand what do we mean by tribe. Once we understand that, we can go the other aspects that is related to tribe or the characteristics of tribe. It is very difficult to define tribe because in a single sentence it will be very difficult for anyone to define what a tribe is. So people usually prefer to give certain characteristics that is common or that has become an attributes of a tribe. So the features or characteristics of a tribe. But simply, in order that we can understand in a way which is not complex, we can understand that a tribe is also a society, a community, a social group. It may be heterogeneous also, who are regarded as homogeneous group, and yet there might be differentiation or stratifications even among that within the tribe. And their main characteristic is also that the members of that community or the social group, or we call it society or tribe, believes that they are the descendants of a common ancestor. The ancestor may be or might be true, or maybe just a mythology. It might be there, or it may not be there, but they believe that they are descended from one ancestor, forefather, or one figure, father. So when they believe that they are descendants of one ancestor, they also believe that they are related in blood, they are family members, they are clan members, they are also moieties, they are also phratries, they are also just a member of that community, which in larger term, a generic term, is called tribe. And tribes usually is supposed to have a territory with them. Of course, there are some nomadic tribes also who does not have the sense of belonging or settling in one place. They go from one place to another, and that had become their kind of the tradition, kind of their way of life. So, but apart from these nomadic tribes, the tribes are supposed to associate with territory, that land. Land is important. They are supposed to be settled or identified with territory, the physical place. Then also, these tribes are supposed to be simple societies. They are regarded as people having, not sophisticated culture, not sophisticated ideas, not sophisticated technology, but even in their way of life, even in terms of technology, they are, expected to be of a simple nature. And they are also, thought of as egalitarian in nature. That means there is no much gap between the members of the group, the members of the tribe, the rich and the poor. That gap between the rich and the poor, the haves and the have-nots, are not much, even if there are, differences. It's not quite like the class system that we have in Europe, or now in modern days we have even class system in India. And of course, there seems to be some sort of stratification even among tribes also, that we can see in our research works in the fields. But that is negligible, that is minimal, because no society is seen as having no stratification. That means there is no society that has no stratification in one form or another. But it is a difference in degrees or difference in kind. That is what anthropologists and sociologists understand. And so also other social scientists. Those who are in the field will know that there are even social stratification among tribes, social rankings within the tribes. Yeah, that's something to do with this tribe. Of course, we can go to different definitions and perspectives of various scholars, but this is the gist to understanding what a tribe is. And of course, a tribe is supposed to have solidarity within themselves. They are supposed to be somewhat homogeneous, but they are also heterogeneous in a way. the tribes in India are very heterogeneous, which means they are very different in terms of their origin, in terms of their culture, even in terms of their racial elements. The heterogeneity within the tribes, within the tribes of India is also somewhat, that is also applicable even within the tribe, that even within the tribe there are also some heterogeneity of one group to another. But some groups are more homogeneous than others, so there is no uniformity even among the tribes. Well, now we know what is a tribe, but a tribe and a scheduled tribe has different connotations. People don't usually understand these differences. Students are confused about what is a tribal and what is a scheduled tribe, a tribe and a scheduled tribe. A tribe is just a generic or general term for all the tribals that we understand. But when we talk of scheduled tribe, it is with special reference to India, and this is a legal term which is used in the Constitution of India, in the legal realm of India. A tribe may not be scheduled. A tribe may not be in the list of the government's recognition. The name may be the same, but some tribes which have some peculiarity, like the Gadis, for example, of Himachal Pradesh. The Gadis of some areas are scheduled tribes, but the Gadis of some other areas are not scheduled tribes. So they will not have the facility or the opportunity or the profit of being a tribal that the scheduled tribes are enjoying, or even the reservation that some of the scheduled tribes are getting. The same so-called tribal Gadis will not be entitled just because they are not entitled. And this is because of certain policies of the government of India, that some areas which has concentration of tribes, good number of tribes, good strength of tribals are scheduled, but whereas even in the same state like Himachal Pradesh, if they are scattered here and there, they are not scheduled. And this was what I found in the Gadis and some tribes of Himachal Pradesh and some other parts of India. So scheduled tribe is a legal term, a constitutional recognition of a tribe in India. If someone has to be a tribe with legal entity, with legal entitlement, then one has to be a scheduled tribe. Otherwise, even if they are tribe, they will not be entitled to the benefits and profits of being a tribal. So that is tribe vis-a-vis scheduled tribe. Then we have also some terms like criminal tribes and denotified tribes. Now these are communities that usually students don't learn, or they're not exposed to this kind of definitions and concepts. During the previous days, And surely in the 19th, later part of 19th century. And if I can correctly remember, it is, I think, in 1871. Yeah, I think 1871, where the Criminal Act, they call it this CTA, Criminal Tribes Act, was enacted in some parts of North India. And later, of course, it was implemented, enacted in eastern part and certain part of India. And so many Hindu castes were, included in this what is called, so-called criminal tribes. And this, according to the understanding of the officials, British officials, because of few tribe members who had, indulged in some criminal acts, would have, given the audacity to the authorities to have a blanket consideration that all the tribe members who are associated with those criminals, few criminals, are considered under the quote-unquote criminal tribes or criminal tribe. And so there are so many criminal tribes, even in the first phase of it, about more than, 150 tribes, castes, Hindu castes were, named criminal tribes. And that was unfortunate because of the CTA, Criminal Tribes Act, 1871, and the following acts in different regions of India. There have been, Christian, there have been, misunderstood by the authorities, but surely they might have used it for their purpose, and they were, considered as criminal tribes. They are criminals. But then later, when India got independence, and in 1949, this Criminal Tribes Act, these criminal tribes or criminal tribals were denotified. The notification was withdrawn. That was sometime in 1949. And maybe after 1 or 2 years, that means from 52, 51, 52 or so, this act, which is called Criminal Tribes Act, was withdrawn, was abolished. So that was, the kind of justice brought to, maybe poetic justice, a late justice brought about to the so-called criminal tribes. They may not be criminal, but they were considered criminal, so they were dispossessed, they were alienated, they were made to suffer in some way, even professionally, because of restrictions for the so-called criminal people, criminal tribals. And that was really a legal implication and a social implication for what the British had claimed once as it was good for those people. They are trying to protect the people. And in terms of operation, when it comes into action, it proved in the otherwise. So that is why even among the British, some sympathetic scholars, anthropologists like Fuchs, had to even defend for what the so-called criminal tribes. Yeah, and now let us come to a term which is very controversial and which is no longer used in this modern sociological and anthropological word, but which is still used in the state language. It is called primitive tribes. So primitive society, primitive tribe is now considered as a derogatory word. It's pejorative. That means it is offending to those people whom we call primitive people or primitive tribes. And yet in India, some tribes have been identified, some very, very backward tribes, some tribes which are much removed from being modern, have been identified as primitive tribes. And anthropological and sociological, this term is, something which is to be avoided, but since it is used in the operational level, it is good to also understand. Now some primitive tribes, the so-called primitive tribes, are there in various parts of India. For example, the Chenchus of Andhra Pradesh. They are in a very remote place, they are very backward. And the Marams of Manipur, for example, they are considered as primitive tribes. There are so many primitive tribes identified. They have some profit and some more opportunities for being what is called primitive, so that some developmental works can be boosted, The kind of development that is thought out for them is supposed to be more because they are considered as very backward. But to my knowledge, it is very difficult to say because whether the government or the state machineries are really implementing or not, in the policy level there is what we call primitive or non-primitive, somewhat better off even among the tribes. But I don't see much developments being brought even among the Chenchus or among the Marams or among the Daraus. We can name some of the tribes. We don't see in our eyes. This is something which I think is still a failure to an extent about the kind of outlook that we have for this, what we call primitive tribes, and the kind of work that is being put to make them elevate from their state of affairs. Like I said, it's improper nomenclature, but it's being used, so it was just used that way. Now, we can talk about tribal culture, and then we can talk about the tribal economy, and so forth. Yeah. Tribals are, like I said, heterogeneous people or peoples. They are not one people, they are different peoples. They are from different origin. For example, the tribals in Jharkhand are very much different from the tribals in Tamil Nadu, or the tribals in Karnataka, or the tribals in the northeast, or the tribals in Ladakh, or Himachal Pradesh. They are different in many ways. They are different even in terms of, their food habit, in terms of their worldview, in terms of their, even the kind of dress they wear, their, dress patterns, and the kind of their understanding of the world around them, and the kind of cultivate farming and way of life. We see lots of differences among them, But we also find some similarities among these tribes, that they are somewhat egalitarian in their way of life. We don't see much difference if we have to take in an ideal way about, say, their economy. The economy, the differences of the rich and the poor is not that, the same with, it's not comparable with that we see in the class-ridden society. I'm not talking about European situation, but I'm even referring to the situation in India itself, in the cosmopolitan cities like Delhi or say, Calcutta or Mumbai or Madras or Chennai, or in some other towns like Hyderabad. So they are supposed to be somewhat egalitarian, and that is being observed in most of the tribes. But there are now different levels of tribes today. We see lots of modernization even among tribes. Some have done better, some are still slow at picking up to the mains of, reigns of civilization. Nevertheless, we see that there has been some rapid changes taking place, evolving, or even revolutionizing within their culture, within their way of life, and trying to catch up with the modern world. And in fact, some tribes like the Mizos are doing very well. They are claiming that 100% literacy is with them already. And even if that is not true, they come just next to Kerala, the state of Kerala, which is considered as the most literate state in India. So, in terms of literacy, yes. But in terms of economy, they may not be. Because the kind of economy that they have, even the Mizos, is not really comparable with the economy of some other tribes or some other states or communities. That is what I see as, as an observer to the developmental works, or the kind of, technology that they have, the kind of business that they have, trade and commerce. Still, the tribes are lacking so much. Maybe, of course, they come very late. They are the latecomers to the, competition of the world, the developmental competition. That means the world is considered as a kind of competition for all. It's like just a race. It's like a running game. The one who starts first has always the advantage of being the winner or being more progressive. Even if they if two persons start a race, a running game, if they don't start from the same baseline, even if they run at the same speed, there will be lots of differences. The pace will be so much. The pace will be just corresponding to where they started. So likewise, in the race of civilization, the so-called tribals of today in India have been, latecomers, and they have been starting a bit late. However, we can also see that there has been lots of developments among the tribals. And regarding tribal economy, we do not see that they are still very good, because many are under poverty line, because there is no infrastructure in those tribal areas. and people don't like to invest in those areas. And most of the tribals live in a very harsh landscape. So that is a kind of, even physical strain is there. The stumbling block is from physical side, and even from social side, even from the political decision-making side, and even from those business people, the merchants, the traders. And I think the government of India should have already started, all this, along with these entrepreneurs, businessmen, so that they can also catch up, like the way people are in other metropolitan cities. And of course, something is done by the state, and NGOs, but I think still we need to put more effort to that. And in spite of all this, in spite of talking about trying to develop those areas, the tribal areas, we are seeing a reverse or a contradictory element. And that one of these is, and I think that is quite ugly even in this democratic world, the dam construction and the implications. Most of the dams, if not all, are constructed in those areas where the tribals live. We know even of the Narmada project, how people in those areas and the surrounding areas, including those NGO activists, have moved against the state, against those companies, because of this displacement and failure in terms of rehabilitation. Narmada Bachao Andolan is, I think, one of the strong movements relating to dam, anti-dam movements. And this is something which concerns to sociologists and anthropologists and even policymakers and statesmen to look into all these areas. Because we see that the problem in Narmada project is that the state wanted to, even the company wanted to have more power, which means the height of the dam should be more, so that it yields more result. That is in terms of commercial aspect. But when it comes to human displacement, it becomes a problem. And these people, the tribals, would argue that why commercial aspects should be more important than the human lives themselves. They would say that they live with the nature, they live with, their culture is attached to environment, even their belief system, and also their livelihood is just cut off. It's just submerged, so that they have to go to some other place which is not theirs. Maybe the government of India tried to rehabilitate them, but now we see that there has been lots of failures in all those dam-affected areas. We have not got a report that is really satisfactory, even among the in the eyes of the citizens also. Forget about the state. The same case is there in the Dipaimukh Dam, that is in the Barak River, which is in the border of Manipur and Assam. The environmentalists would say that this is going to affect, because it is in a seismic zone, it is in a zone of that would sink. and it is going to affect so many populations. You know, the Zeliangrong Nagas and the Mar people are going to be the victims, and they have been the victims. But still, the state of Manipur are trying to, go ahead with lots of, negotiations or connections with these companies. NIPCO is one of them. NEEPCO. So there are people's protests, not only within the tribes themselves, but so many non-tribals are involved in that because they see that the plight of the tribals there, the plight of this environmental problem would be, affecting their lives too. So, and just not too far away from that place, there has been lots of protests even in Nong Tam Dam. Earlier it was called Multipurpose Taubal Project, and the dam was actually not built or constructed with the consent of the people, but the state wanted to go ahead with that, and the people protested so much. Somehow from back door they tried to, get into the area, started building with, security men posted here and there. But later we came to know that they were not successful, because we see that their walls, their buildings are destroyed by even people, by the mob, because they were really against it. So like this, development-induced displacement has also become a problem, a great problem in India. And we need to take cognizance of this. And of course, there are so many other areas, like tribal polity and tribal political life, and then tribal movements, which is very important as we also study the tribal situation. Then also we see the differentiation of society of the tribes. This is also very important, but for today I think we'll try to leave it for later deliberation, discussion. Since time is running out, we'll try to wind it up by just saying that India is the second largest country, just next to African countries, that has a good strength of tribal population, which stands now at around 8% of the total population in India. And there are so many communities, more than 400 communities, recognized civil tribes in India, and of course there are so many which are in the queue for recognition. I was told even in the coming budget session, many tribes will be recognized. So it is still in transition. But now what we need to know, and what we had understood, is that of the concept of a tribe and the various aspects of tribes, so that we know that the way of life of the tribals, the general situation of the tribes, and specifically we'll try to deal much more in our later discussions. And thank you for joining in this evening discussion. Though there is no query from your side, at least I hope that you have understood something from this deliberation. And just to say goodbye and good night to all of you.